Right. Right. Okay, guys, this is motive 21. Brother, good to have you on here. This will be interesting, and I'm going to deviate. I so generally with the guest, we'll start from the back and go, okay, let's go back here and come up. But this last week, you had the Clubhouse Space for Humanity talk on Story, and graciously invited me on there and got to talk. And for this episode, I wanted to start right there. That right now, where you are, which is what I'm usually leading up to, but right now in your, I'm going to call it devotion to calling. You can label it how you want to space. What is the flat out motive? What is the reason that you have taken with all that you have done that we're going to go through a little bit, that you have said, man, space is where this vehicle, at least, again, I'm going to put all these things in here and try to put the words in your
Yeah.
mouth, and you're going to come and tell me what it is. But why space?
Wow. I have a lot of reasons, I guess, but give you a few. Starting when I was a kid, 8 or 9 or so, I guess, when Cosmos first came out, and we had PBS. That was the one channel we had rocking in the house. I think we might have had Disney later, but I somehow caught wind of that on there, and I didn't know what in the world I was watching with that. With that series. It's pretty in depth for for a kid, talking about the creation of life and so on. And I, for whatever reason, got into that. It would play a lot on PBS, so I'd see it a lot, just kind of coming around. So I sort of just got a little taste of it there, like this idea of space. I hadn't really thought about it as a kiddo before that, and our parents weren't really into it necessarily, I
I,
guess.
I was just, and that's some of what's always interesting to me when you have somebody who has this big interest, and you go, what piqued that interest? Because here you and I, we grew up in the same household, obviously separated by quite a while, but space never really entered my domain. So it did you. So here's something that came along and didn't catch the other kids' interest, and then boom, it catches Jared. So it's just curious.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking it's actually a little bit more connected to some of the other elements that we're likely to talk about in my life. But I had a sort of always a propensity for, um, the awe and the wonder and the mysterious and the
Yeah.
ineffable and towards going towards that, it's like a moth towards the light, and always looking at what's this thing that's out there, what's this, and that could have meant in my mind, the antipodes of my mind, or the vastness of the cosmos. I was always intrigued by the mystery of things and the ineffable. um,
So
so
was
I
it
guess that was a space, so to speak, that was there always. It's like it was always there, and it wasn't like I had to go get something to find that, or I didn't have to open a certain book or whatever. It was always there, and I think I appreciated that part.
Well, because you're saying that stuff, and that's different. Those are different words, different labels, different perspective. And you going, oh, space, man. Well, I love Star Trek and Star Wars, and I always wanted to
Yeah,
be a space trooper. I can't even remember what the things are.
I don't
And
know if I've ever even seen a whole Star Trek
that's my
episode.
point. That's my
Yeah.
point. That it wasn't that type of space. It was. Well, I remember you talking about the Matthew McConaughey movie. What was that?
Interstellar.
Interstellar, which of course I saw, and I understood about one iota of
Mm,
that. And but again, it's speaking your language, and you're over here. But in
very
asking that, so
much.
here you've got this interest. I like that. It wasn't in space guns and spaceships and Star Wars. It was in this vast cosmos and what that meant to you. On the call a couple days ago, a few days ago, whatever, on the Space for Humanity Clubhouse call that you were leading, you made the statement for your own story that space doesn't matter outside of humanity. That's a significant statement.
Yeah. Um, yeah, you could summarize it that way. Yeah, I think I've been in this discussion quite often, especially as a humanitarian, as you know, for 25 years now. much more in a blatant humanitarian sense, meaning I worked on domestic violence issues in the States. I worked on women's rights in Rwanda and gender equality in Rwanda and Kenya, East Africa. Those were very blatant moments of altruistic behavior in my life, right? Um, but then later, it was sort of the space frontier that caught my eye, and or not later. I guess it was consistent my whole life. I had separated the two. It's like I work for American Indian movement over here, and I have my love of space and that discussion over here. They were very separate, um, and that was very much connected, I think, to the pale blue dot Carl Sagan kind of scenario where he had Voyagers. He sent Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 off in the 70s, and they turned back or he had them turn back and look at Earth, like where we were in the cosmos. We saw that pale blue dot, and it was a big thing. There was a conversation, there was a moment when Sagan was in NASA's control room and said, I want to turn that thing around. And they said, you're crazy, we don't have the power to do it. It's going to waste too much juice. We can't justify it. And he said, this is for humanity to know our space and our place in the universe. So it was a big moment, that he had. And I, again, somehow caught wind of some of this stuff as a kid and was intrigued by it, and am still today. Uh, and it very much, I think, formed a foundation for my thinking later on, which we'll get to in the storyline,
Yeah.
of what the way it made me think about our place in the universe, our interconnectedness, which is a theme in my discussion, and all that. And it just sort of gave me some scientific framework for a lot of the way my mind worked, I think.
Well, it's interesting because again, you go back to my experience of you, and it was, I would have said, my brother has always been called to, it used to be at least, to serve the least of these, which obviously was tangible as you're in Rwanda helping people within, the sex trade and sex slavery and yada, yada, with Keza and helping those women over there. And, whether it's a homeless person, whether it's, you were always drawn to serving people, and it was real tangible. And then all of a sudden to me, and again, we've lived our separate lives to some degree. We come together here and there, and, and all of a sudden it's space. And
Yeah,
I didn't quite put the dots together. And that's again why it was interesting to hear
fair enough.
you. Now I know I know that it wasn't a surprise to hear you say it, but it was interesting to hear you say, no, my effort into space is in response to my heart for humanity, which there's other people. Gosh, this is going to say, how can I say this with politically correct and non-judgmentally? But, there's some people in, let's say, science and space that are in it for the love of it. They may not be driven
Yeah.
from a humanitarian aspect. Now we can still benefit from it. So again, I'm not dissing it. We all have our different reasons, and thank God that people are doing great things regardless of that specific drive. And
It's all needed.
it's all needed. It doesn't have to be the same altruistic perspective as one or the
Mm-hmm.
other. But yeah, for you today to see that you are in this race for space, I don't know if that's the terminology you would, this exploration,
It's one used in that arena. It's not one I would use.
the opportunity of space. Okay, state that.
I often say the promise of space, or the promise of anything. What is the promise of it? What does it mean to us?
Okay, but now I do want you to be tangible. So if I'll play I hate I need a better term that's like a positive one than devil's advocate, because I don't want anybody to be the devil's advocate. I could do without you in my life. But if you want to just question to say, okay, if I'm poking it or just trying to open it up to say, okay, why do I care? Why does Kevin Miller care about space? Why should I? Or what opportunity is there for me? Need.
Let's go with that one. What opportunity is there? I wouldn't push for anyone needing to do anything in that regard in terms of it. But I mean,
how could it benefit me?
Yes, that's fair enough. Okay. So, and in that regard, for me, it's how can it benefit anyone, really? So what is the promise of space, I guess? I feel like, Dylan Taylor, he's the guy that founded Space for Humanity, and he's got more space investments than about anybody else out there, just in terms of diversification of the different organizations. He often says space gets the best of us, which I really appreciate. there's a reason for that. When you look at the canvas of space, that's an environment that you're, discussing or operating in or trying to get to or whatever. Uh, it's not made for humans. We can't breathe there, for instance. Just one of the, that's probably the biggest thing we could start with. We can't breathe there. So, it's like the ocean. So we have, when we explore in an environment like that, we have to give it our best. We can't just, we're not sipping Mai Tais on the beach. We're going to space. Um, an example that I like to use is the example of the ISS, the International Space Station. Any one organization, or sorry, country could have just said, we're doing that. Well, we did. We're doing that. We're cowboying up. We're making it our own, whatever. As things progress, it was like, well, pretty clear that it didn't make much sense to do that by ourselves. Every country kind of was like, if we're going to actually do this, we're going to need some cooperation from everyone. It took 15 nations to come together to build the ISS. 15 nations that are not always chummy, shaking hands, hanging out, but they're like, hey, we have a common interest here in exploring our planet and our space in it, our place in it, in the universe. So these organizations came together, these countries came together, all these people came together, all this stuff, and we made the ISS. If there's a pinhole in that thing, everybody dies. Just as easy as that, or just simple as that. So that canvas, it sort of extracts something out of us that I feel that sometimes we're a pro athlete, right? And still push the limits, I know. So when you go out and you push the limits in an environment where you're barreling down a, mountain or whatever, it's likely to pull something out of you that's magical that you may not get any other way. Because you're like, oh my God, here I am going down, this thing. That's a micro version of what I'm talking about in a macro version. When we look at space, it's like, if we go there, we have to think of everything. We have to think of things we might not have thought of before. There's innovation coming out of that, but it's also a unity thing. And like, if we don't lean into our innate interconnectedness to the rest of the cosmos, it's really hard to operate well in space. It's also hard to explain it or understand it. Opposite order. um, it's just it's a canvas that says, if you're coming here, I got to have your best. And I like that. It was also very similar for me when I lived in Africa. I lived in East Africa, coming from relatively speaking, or at least comparatively cushy situation in Nashville. Yeah, we weren't wealthy or anything, but relative to what I had in Africa, I thought, well, that's a canvas that's likely to pull something grand out of me that wouldn't come out of me sitting in a cushy environment in Nashville. In that environment in Africa, there were lions, and I was doing Maasai warrior stuff and all that stuff, and the political activism that literally did land me in jail a few times. That kind of stuff. I thought, well, I'm going to find me there. I went to Africa. This is a question that comes up. I'll just go ahead and throw into this, or lean into this. Did you go to Africa to, save the Africans or whatever? You could use that, that's scenario over any other humanitarian effort. No, that was the answer to that. I went to find myself, like, to see who could I be in this environment? What might it pull out of me? What more deeply human element might come out of me? How might it make me more of a vessel of love? And I really was thinking those things when I went, and I definitely had a journey that extracted a lot of that out of me and unveiled a lot of that.
Well, I remember it. So, you have these acute anchors experiences with a person that come to mind. So that'd be another one. If somebody's asking me about my brother and about Africa, I remember you saying it. I don't know if it was verbally, a text, an email. I don't know where it came out. I don't know if it was you and me amongst the family, but it was something in regards to the challenges, hardship, however you want to frame it, of Africa. And you said part of it, it just makes you feel more.
I remember saying, there's never a time when I don't feel fully alive.
Okay, yeah. And I thought, and I extrapolated it through my own filters to say it requires more of you. And I've thought about that. So
Yes.
here, yeah. So that helped me frame some of my thoughts for me living up here at 9,200 feet above sea level in the Rockies. And sometimes I question it because I can get a negative attitude. And I think this is a pain in the butt. I mean, I ultimately inside, adore snow. And in the same moment, I can wake up and go, son of a gun, you gotta wipe off the cars and plow the
Yeah,
driveway. And,
it
poor
requires some
me.
work.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
then I also realize that when I'm somewhere else, I just feel kind of meh. I can't imagine living in a neighborhood. This is going to offend a lot of people. Again, it's our whatever strokes, everybody's got their thing and you're doing something
My
more.
kids, when we're eating food, they say, "Don't yuck somebody's yum."
Yeah, there you go.
Your
So,
yum is on a mountain. Mine is in a
yeah.
jungle. They're
Well,
different.
let me say this. My yum, I totally understand how it could be yuck for somebody. So it's not some grand thing, but I do like that it requires something of me. I do
I
appreciate the
appreciate
hardship.
that part. Yeah.
Yeah, it requires something of me. And I feel I get more out. So I get that with space. So here you are. I didn't really follow that trajectory. It's what you did in Africa. You're saying that's somewhat of what you did in space. It wasn't to just save the Africans. It required more of you, made you more of who you are. Space over here is not just this. I think it's easy for the layman like me to say, oh, he wants to find a place on Mars because it's going to be the dystopian thing. We're going to burn Earth and we've got to get out of here. And if we don't find a
Yeah.
mothership, we're all going to we're not going to have a place to go. And you're saying,
Yeah.
okay,
I'm not a plan B guy. It's funny that this is a discussion that we have with my space community that's pretty tight. And we talk a lot about this, but none of us are plan Bers, is what we call it. We're not leaving the
never
planet.
heard of that. That's a good one.
Um,
I like that.
well, that's kind of like, let's go to Mars and because we need a backup plan or
Dude,
whatever. And
that's a
I think
book title, Jared. Come on,
we're not
plant
plan Bers.
something like that. Because I would
Yeah.
look at your life and my life as well, and to say we, as by our lifestyle, our persona, we're not Plan Bers. You just
Yeah.
kind of that's where we're
I'm
going. We're
going
going.
full tilt boogie on this one, man. Whatever we got.
Yeah, we
uh,
didn't. Our folks, but they deprived us of a Plan B. Man,
no,
we should be upset.
just have a lot of faith and just go full tilt boogie. That was
Yeah.
it. It's just like BMX racing. Um, well, yeah, I mean, I had there's a lot of this story, I guess, that is even more interconnected than I, I had given credit to until I was thinking about this interview, actually, when you said some of the things you wanted to talk about. But there's a part that's worth noting here, just to thumbtack it in here in the conversation, that in my activism, which was very front line, and it was very helping the least of these and so on, like you alluded to earlier, I ultimately got to the point, and it was when I adopted my son, Francois. So that there's a storyline. I landed in Rwanda in 2006, ended up bumping into a street kid, said yes a lot of times, and now I have a kid, a grandkid actually as well. He's got a kid. Um, but with Francois, I recognized there was another human in my space that was, at the time, we didn't speak the same language. I learned Kinyarwanda over time, his language, but he didn't speak English the first 5, 6 years. Um, so there was a language barrier that added to this, but he wasn't going to listen to the things I said. You have kids, right? It's not so much listening to what you say as much as it is just watching how you do life and emulating how you do life. How does dad do life? How does mom handle a traffic jam? That kind of stuff. Um, so as I tuned into that with Francois, this new little human as part of my life, who was a very young and underdeveloped 10 years old at the time, we guess. Um, I started thinking about the systems of things, the interconnectedness of things, the science, the quantum physics of things, for that matter. I went down that trail prior to that. And I started realizing that, if I really want to make a difference in this world, if I really want the world to be more loving and kind and a culture of, interconnectedness that celebrates our uniqueness and, prioritizes our unity and things like that, which by the way is what I'm pushing for. um, if I really want that, I can't keep fighting symptoms for the rest of my life. And when I look at the human trafficking issues that I was working on there in Rwanda and Congo, and even some of the domestic violence stuff here in the States, the racial issues in the United States that I've worked on my whole life, even the tribal issues in other countries and so on. those are all caused by the way we think. People do, they behave according to their priorities, which is according to what they value, which is according to their experiences, which forms their perspective. It's all interlinked. And as I started to unravel that ball, I was like, oh my God, my kids are going to be fighting sex trafficking if I don't start addressing the perspectives that create that scenario. That why does another human think it's a good idea to sell another human as a commodity? Uh, that's a problem. But if I can change or influence the way people think to some degree, um, maybe we won't have people that we have to arrest and put in jail or stop or in a sting operation from a trafficking ring or something like that. So you can see at this point in my life, I'm like 29 years old then or something, and I'm starting to, things are floating around like our place in the cosmos, the way we think, and that creates the behavior that I'm then, 20 years down the road trying to fix behavior from someone that I wish would have been infused with love from their family and their community. Uh, and there's a lot in that we can get into with the indigenous principles and the way I see the world from that perspective. But it's all these things, this kind of amalgamation of different ideas and concepts in my life that ultimately led me to thinking, wow, I'd like to be part of, and maybe I'm uniquely equipped because of my experience to be part of transforming the way people think. Because I did spend 20 years on the ground, boots on the ground, activism on the streets, in America and then in East Africa and even in Costa Rica. Um, and all these things started to come together. And I was like, wait a minute, I think I have a different methodology and tactic that I want to try now for the same reasons and the same why that I've always had, but new tactics have evolved.
Okay, I want to back up right there because you said the words, the phrase, if I want to make a difference. And there's the curiosity to me as I look at those who go forth and do these things that fulfill them and serve others and others who don't. It's not the path that they choose. Why do we have those differences, and why did you want to make a difference is of interest, because I don't have this one totally laid out for myself. And we came from a family, and there's three kids here, and we all seem to want to make a difference, though it's in different ways. Because here you are going after, as you were talking, I wrote down, because you've dealt with sex issues and race issues and been vocal. I mean, your work with with race, with equality, with fairness and justice. That's what I would say. I think what is my brother called to? Those are big labels that I would put up there. And if I look at myself, I'd say, gosh, do I care about those things? Yes. Is that what calls me? Not really. I mean, I'm aware of what you're doing over here and the need for that. And I find my motive, my why is over here. I want to serve in a different capacity. I'm drawn to a different person, different demographic, a different avatar, if you would say. And so, I could ask us both that, what happened was it something in our childhood? We're nature versus nurture that wants us to have some impact in the world. But for you, I wonder, I mean, I can sit here and ponder myself. I don't know if you have an answer to that. Why were you called to that? Because I wasn't necessarily called to that. As you know, my wife is with the Native Americans, and we go down there, and I share her calling in that, but I don't have the same heart. I feel very incompetent amongst people who are being beaten down that far. And man, you are at home in that. It seems like I didn't lead you with a
Yeah.
question on that. I'm just that was a motive. So that was a motive from you early on. I mean, I remember the stories of you as a kid, and some of those happened when I was gone. I mean, we're 7 years apart.
Yeah.
And so if I left at 18, 17, whatever it is, you're 10, 11 years old, and, hearing stories. And that was the thing. Oh, Jared, whatever you give him for walking through someplace, there's a homeless person, he's going to give it away. Well, I didn't do that. You know, where, when you look
Yeah.
back introspectively, go, man, what was it back then?
Man, I've reached into that bucket a few times. I'm not entirely sure in terms of the origins or the impetus for that kind of perspective. I do know that, I mean, we saw mom and dad, in their benevolence and altruistic behavior, not in super blatant ways, but, if some dude at the church needed a place to stay, they'd stay there. And there was an incident with that, I think, once. Dude stole some stuff from dad.
Guitar.
But even, yeah, even that, what did dad do? Did he go on some rampage or something? I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure he probably just said, well, everything belongs.
Yeah.
That guy's got a guitar now. So that, again, like we were watching as kids, how do our parents handle situations? So we saw that kind of stuff, and you saw like how they acted. So I had a taste of it there. It wasn't completely bereft at my parents, to the altruistic stuff. So I I know that it's interesting how my mind's kind of framing this up, because a lot of it has to do with what I love, and we do what we love. Our dad wrote a book, 48 Days of the Work You Love. There you go. He does what he does because he loves to do it. He likes to figure people's stuff out and say, "Oh, here, check this. Does that work for you?" And people light up, and they're like, "Oh my God, Dan, you changed my life." And he's like, "Yes." And he feels good, right? Because he's done something good in the world. You and everything that you're doing, I mean, try and hold Kevin Miller back from doing what Kevin Miller does, right? Like you go out there and you go after the mic and in your audience, just like you did on the bike. And not all those years I watched you blowing people off the road. um, so that it's something insatiable inside you that you're not trying to satiate either. You're doing it because you love the mix of it.
Mhm.
You're like being in the stuff and go, wait, I'm gonna have to figure this out today. uh I go into that too, thinking like, what lights me up the most? Like, what action do I do that lights me up the most? What do I engage in that lights me up the most? When I think about what it's like to, when I was in Rwanda, and we'd have a sting operation on a trafficking situation, and it's done. And you can imagine the things that had to be done for me to be effective in that situation. Just sort of enter that in. The lifestyle that I had to lead to know what I had to know as an informant and to do all these things. So there's all that journey that pulled stuff out of me that I mean most people never think about. Um, I like to learn. I like for things, my greatest self to be extracted out of me through some environmental situation I've hurled myself into. Clearly, um, even little things like when I go to back in the day when we used to actually go to grocery stores. I live in California; everything's locked down for last year, but um, I'd park a football field away from the front door because, like, well, I don't know, I'm gonna walk. I'll probably see some people. I'll get some exercise. I'll carry my bags back. Life's an exercise room for me, and I take the steps, and I smell the flowers. I do things like that. Um, it's consistent because I like to draw those things out of myself. If I throw myself into some of the situations, the plight of the American Indian, for instance, that's been the longest running one in my life since I was 17 or so, 16 maybe. Um, and just looking at what that's done for me as I studied that, then I found a underling of all this wisdom, the wisdom keepers, the wisdom tradition, that I've carried forward into my own family. Now my kids speak Lakota, in their prayers, and we talk about that perspective guides us. That American Indian perspective guides us, specifically Lakota. So it's like I hurled myself into somebody else's plight and found my way of living that I wanted so much, the Lakota way that I live out as best I can. And I found that each moment that I hurled myself into, something magical happened. And I thought, man, most people never have this kind of magic in the whole lifetime. And I have it like every week. I'm lucky. I'm blessed to be living in some situation where at the time I had to dodge bullets or a terrorist attack or an actual bomb going off beside me, things like that. It's like, oh my God, I'm alive. And I find different ways to induce that now, that are very different now that I have a gaggle of kids and whatever. But it's been consistent in that mixing of things, and my reason's always been the same.
Well, one thing I want to
Tactics.
pull out there too is even as I habitually ask and seek, with my guests, what is there a why? What is the why? If you know it, I got to couch that with, I appreciate what you said. You're going after what lights you up, and I'll add on to that because that's what helps you light other people up. So that's the beauty there.
Lighting someone else up is what I get the most joy out of.
Oh,
Yes.
so perfect cycle. But that, I also came to some years ago, and I think I was being asked a similar question, and the honest answer to some degree was, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know why it lights me up. And I got to a point of, not from a frustrated standpoint, but going, we also don't have to justify it. So for everybody out there listening to the Motive Show and us talking about it, whatever lights you up, that's what we're advocating, of course. And you don't always have to justify it because, honestly, no, Jared, I know when it came to fruition and it was your fault again. No, I'm going to give you credit for it. That's a bad way of saying it. I'll give you credit for it. And it was you
Yeah.
talking about, it was us in some union, some conversation talking about what you're doing over here in Africa. And at the time, again, it was working with these abused women. And here I am, in essence, helping middle to upper class white Americans. And, kind of looking at that and, gosh, doesn't seem quite as altruistic. And I remember at that time looking at it and saying, man, I don't know. I don't have a justification. It just is. It's just where I feel called to. That's where I've always, been. I'm not over here and I don't know. It just is. So I didn't have to justify it. I don't necessarily today. I'm sure if I was forced to, maybe I should, but I don't know. Here I am. And do we have to justify that thing that most motivates us, that lights us up?
I don't draw a line between what I was doing and what you're doing. It's just humans.
Maybe I
And
was. Maybe I was considering it.
I think you were at the time, but
Yeah.
and that's reasonable. I get that. It's not doesn't seem strange to me that you've been looking for that answer. I I found maybe it's this, maybe I don't know. But I think we're attracted to humans and to situations and whatever that may, for whatever reason, draw something particular out of us. Or I don't know. I mean, I have friends that they're a light in a certain environment that I could not, and I could not live in, and I couldn't live on Wall Street,
Yeah.
that kind of environment, those kind of things. Um, and I think, man, I'm glad those guys are there doing that there, because they get something out of that. I don't. That might crush me. I want to be over in a different situation. I'm attracted to a people group or whatever, which has evolved somewhat over the years, but that extracts a certain thing out of me when I engage with them. It's like when I get close to that, something comes out of me. I want that, want more of that.
Yeah.
And I've done that with different people groups in different ways. And I mean, I had an experience in Katrina, doing Katrina relief in New Orleans when right after the storm. And it was nuts, the stuff that we experienced. And it was violent. And I was in the area there was mostly violence, not more than the natural disaster part. And that did something to me. It wasn't a group of people I wanted to hang out with or get more of, but it churned something up in me. And 6 months later, I was in Rwanda for what I thought was 6 months and ended up being a decade. um, but what I'm getting at is that I feel like I've gone after situations and groups that I felt was going to pull the next thing out of me. It wasn't always cognizant, maybe, or I wasn't always cognizant at the time, but of that. But there's been a pool that I follow, that intuitive pool. And I believe that we were all made for symbiosis. And the easiest way of getting at what I'm saying, I guess, is that humans, think of that yin and yang is what I was kind of making with my hands here.
Yeah.
But think of humans and the natural world, even beyond just the planet, but the natural world. I believe we were built for symbiosis. Like we were built to get in lock sync and like work to benefit one another, in this symbiotic beauty. I think that that's always the promise of humanity and nature. And so I always, in any situation I walk into it, just believing that that's possible in that moment, that we
Yeah.
could enter into some symbiotic thing together. If I focus and I connect with you, we can enter into this tango together that's just beautiful. Who knows what beauty could come out of that? Same thing with my relationship with our natural world, with the planet, and I feel like we're made to be in harmony. Anything less than that is due to us just sort of uh, not actualizing the opportunity for
Yeah.
a multitude of reasons. But I always believe it's out there. So I am drawn by that. I am an eternal optimist. When I get in these political conversations with friends and stuff, I say, just understand that I'm programmed to find the light in anything we talk about. I'm never going to resolve to just saying it's all screwed up and we're, going to hell and nothing's going to work. I
Yeah.
was like, I don't believe that. I believe that we were made for symbiosis. I believe that we're an expression of love. And the more we lean into that, the more we get to experience that.
Well, that word leaning in, I mean, that's why you're here on the show, is because you're a person that I have experienced as someone who leans into the whys of what they do, into the motives of what they do, into what lights you up, into what drives you. And as I'm more acutely digging into with myself because of this book and going through some of the drives, and a lot of them drove me to bad, not a lot of them, some of them at a certain point in life especially drove me to some bad places,
Yeah.
with my finances, and drove me to a point of my wife saying, hey, I have this great picture of us together, but not in the way it's happening right now, so get your stuff together or I'm gone, or and so that happened there. So in looking at drive and where it goes awry too, you had a time, I don't know how old you were, 2000, around then, 2002, where you had something took you south. And
I know what timeline you just got into.
yeah, I did because I see, in the youth, so you have these drives. I mean, you pursued music, pretty much built your own car, and you're doing things and experiencing things and just kind of going forward, and you end up looking at these ways to serve. But then you also had this, I don't know if it was a dark period, but you had a period where something happened in your drive, and I don't know what, because we weren't obviously super involved with each other at the time. We got involved because you ended up in the hospital because your pancreas shut down. Is that right? Something like that.
That was one of the times, yeah. But that
But
was my most significant
so,
overdose where I literally died. Yeah.
yeah. So, alcohol, drugs, whatever, there you are. And it was
Both.
after that you and I jumped in a car and headed to California together. I actually don't remember. I don't know if it was a month or 3 months or whatever it was, but spent time there together. And you started working your way, out at that point. I don't know what the what was what was happening there. What was driving you, or did you lose your drive?
Mm. I don't know that I've ever lost my why or my drive. Um I've certainly strayed from my uh from actively being involved in going after it. I've gotten astray for sure there. I think, at the time I had gone through some things with work that I was involved with that were pretty heavy on me, just to kind of deal with at a young age like that, of seeing some of the things that I saw, um, even early on. That was mainly working with domestic violence stuff, actually, in Nashville, like Hillsborough Village area and stuff like that. And I was getting a taste for that, and then I was learning lots about what's going on in Africa. The one campaign was, or actually, it wasn't one campaign; it was data at the time. I ended up working with one campaign when it first started, back in the day, partly due to that trip you took me to out in California. That was when I got cleaned up enough to get involved there. But anyway, I had a I had also been through a relationship thing, with that. I was engaged, and then she broke it off. So I was spiraling out because of that. And I had had some issues with substance abuse and alcohol early on, because I was exploring. I wasn't even trying, I didn't have like some terrible life I was trying to escape. I wasn't suicidal or anything. I was just exploring. Again, like I talked about before, I was just interested in the ineffable, the mystery of it all. And I thought, well, I could explore in my mind. I was reading Aldous Huxley at 15 years old. Um, so that
You just
that
caused a whole
was,
lot of people go, I'm not letting my kids read Aldous Huxley. That's what
it might be wise at that age,
they're
actually.
going to get sued by him. His book sales just dropped.
Yeah. I would hold off on that one. They should have an age limit or an age on the requirement. Um, anyway, in doing that, I had a familiarity, and I've never feared that space. That I've never feared being in an altered state. I've never feared, all the psychedelics and things that I've done throughout the years. It's the surrendering into that and falling back into it and just saying, universe, take me away, whatever you've got to do with me. It's the same kind of thing that I've done with, I'll go to Africa and throw myself into that churn and see what happens. I'll go to, do relief work in New Orleans for Katrina stuff and just hurl myself into that bucket and see what it pulls out of me. It was a lot of that kind of stuff. However, at one point, then I just got so deep into the drugs and alcohol, and there's a lot of cocaine and um, alcohol and pills and whatever. It was all the stuff. Excuse me. And I really definitely lost my way there. And I just got, at that point, it was like I was in a cave and I was going down through this tunnel and I just kept going, like I always do. It's like, put me in a direction. I'll just go and go and go until there's nothing left. And I did that. And you, I know there's a long story behind this, but ultimately you ended up getting what I remember as like pulling me off the street and saying, hey, dude, we're going to California. I was in such a haze. I hardly remember exactly what happened there. And I was like, how'd you get in the picture? Where'd you come from? Because I was living in another world of my own that was not super healthy. And that was probably the one time I've been totally disconnected from the family, or at least the most. And then you came and took me out, and I remember going through DTs in the car on the way there and feeling like I was going to die.
Well, for the sake of you saying that, and because maybe it'll be of interest to people, that was right on that was in conjunction with me being at financial ruin and my wife saying, this is not happening. And I changed my life around. I mean, I quit racing. I quit cycling. I quit that entire world and I haven't been back since. I mean, I was the end of that. And we went out there, we went to California and met up with, and some people will know this, Tom Ritchie, one of the fathers of mountain biking, and ended up ultimately I ended up taking a gig with him, and then with his company with Ritchie.
So did I.
And
Yeah.
you did too, building airplanes for Tom Ritchie, amongst other weird things.
Yeah.
But it was I look at that as a divine moment that was good for, both of us. And interestingly enough, and I wasn't looking for a transition or anything here, but I mean, part of that thing there was, here's Tom looking to serve in some ways that he cared about. And all of a sudden you end up in Rwanda, uh, directing a bike race. And
For him, yeah.
for him, I know, but my assumption was that is what kind of got you that direction. And I mean, it wasn't long before you spent the next decade in
Yeah.
Africa.
I
And
had worked for Tom back in the day when we were talking about, and
yeah,
then there was like a 2-3 year period where I came to Colorado and was with you guys again, right, in
yeah.
that same area. And then I had gone back to Nashville and was doing stuff with my old business partner again. And then ended up, Tom called me and said, hey, I know you're like the Africa guy, right? I had never been, but I knew a lot, I
Yeah.
studied. And and humanitarian guy, and I think I was maybe the most of that type of guy in Tom's life at the
In
time.
his world, probably.
Yeah. And then he said he would have been talking to Rick Warren, and they had a project and whatever, they want to do something in Rwanda. And I was like, what? And he's like, I don't know, something with bikes. I was like, cool, send me in, coach.
I'm your Huckleberry. Sure.
Yeah, I'll be your Huckleberry. So he, sent me over there with not much, and I figured it out, and there's a bike race that still goes on there, however, 15 years
I
later.
saw something about it not long ago. I mean, to you though, and again, this is my perspective, and I'm sure a billion things happen.
I just needed a ticket to Africa, by the way, so I said yes.
Okay, yeah, and then you end up over there. So the most acute thing that I know is, fast forward, I don't know how many years, and you have founded. Well, you got married to Or did Keza
I
happen?
founded the organization first,
Did you? Okay.
which was Sisters of Rwanda.
Yeah.
Then it became Keza when Ilea came along 2 years later.
Become Keza. Okay. So
I had
some
been
people,
there 2 years by myself before I met
okay,
her.
right. So Keza, then you have this company where you have these women who had been, how do you define them? Sex slaves.
Yeah, I mean that was it.
That
That
was
that
it.
term sex slave, yeah.
So you took them, you have them over here,
Uncomfortable as that is.
and they take newspapers and magazines and whatever, wrap them up, make jewelry that you're coming over here in America and selling at a, decent price. And so here you are, and you get these Keza beads. And so I buy one for $40, and I've got this, my wife has these, awesome beads handmade by these women. It's got a story. I mean, it's a great social entrepreneur type thing. You ended up over here. Heck, you ended up here in Colorado Springs. You did a show, a fashion show that I got to be part of, which was my
Oh my
only
gosh, I
time in the.
forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey man, I keep forgetting about that. I need to put that on my resume somewhere that I did participate in a fashion show.
Hey, Porsche sponsored that, man. We had
There
a
you
Porsche
go.
sponsorship.
We need to get them as a sponsor.
Yeah.
But so there, if you look at how would you define, no, how would you encapsulate the motive that took you in that direction? I mean, because you didn't have, I doubt the impetus of Keza happening when you're saying, "Hey, I'm looking, ticket for Rwanda for this bike thing. Fine, I'll get over there." What was it that sparked you and said, "Man, that's where I want to go for now, at least. That's where I want to go is help these women and do that." Well, that's nuts from a perspective of us, our white bread upbringing, and you're over here in where every house has a gate on it, and it's a
Yeah.
completely different world, and you're helping people. It's dangerous, it's uncomfortable, it's upside down. What
Just
was
what I
it?
was looking for.
Yeah, I made it. But
uh,
that's a mode. I mean, somebody's gonna look at that and go, "Man, that's a specific, not we're not gonna better it or whatever, but that's a specific drive to do that." What was it and that lit you up?
well, I think that what I'm discovering in our conversation right here today is that I have this draw towards hurling myself into a situation to say, what might that pull out of me?
Mm-hmm.
That I want to see that, whatever that could be. Um, and I've done that in lots of different realms. But I've got to the point in my what I call philanthropy. Philanthropy it comes from uh, philos and anthropos. It basically means the act of loving human beings or the state of loving other humans. And then the idea back in the day when it was created, I can't remember what century it was created, or that term was created in, but it was uh, the idea that we would help each other to save ourselves from our own destruction. That's what philanthropy, that's the
Can,
origins
can
of
I
the word.
just can I just point
Yeah.
in on that though, because I think that's new for most people, at least for the
Yeah, they
American.
usually just think it's like you throw money at somebody and you're a
Okay,
philanthropist.
because I and not
Yeah.
to again judge, define, whatever, but as you know, it was a month ago, 3 weeks ago that I had Robert Koch on one of the shows,
Mhm.
and he has these philanthropic things. What do they do? I don't know, but I know one of the pieces is it's throw $1 billion here at this organization and this organization, and that's what we think about with
Mhm.
philanthropy as across the board. And
Yeah.
define it, give the definition. You just did it. I wasn't fast enough to type it. Define philanthropy again.
It comes from philos and anthropos, which is philos love and anthropos of humans. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's the basic idea.
Yeah.
And it comes from that concept of saying the original idea of philanthropy when they created the term. The etymology of the word goes back to the idea of saving ourselves from destroying ourselves.
Hmm.
So I would love you such that you don't destroy yourself. Essentially, it's like what light can I bring into your life? How can I love you? The act of loving you better, and that's philanthropy. So I like that term because it does speak better to what I'm getting at. Uh, I broke down the idea of philanthropy in my own journey to three simple little columns: people, politics, and philosophy. People, that's the Mother Teresa. I care about humans. They're hurting. I want to soothe the wound. It's being Jesus to someone. Just, I want to soothe your wounds. You are sad. You're hurting. You're going through sorrow. I want to soothe you. We need that. That's mom, our mom.
Yeah.
I'm there. She's there to just nurture and hold and take care of us. Then that's one section. Then there's this next one, which is politics. And when I say politics, I also mean politicos, meaning that the way we operate as humans, the way we organize ourselves rather as humans. That's real politics. It's what are we doing? What's our culture look like? What's our group think? Those folks are looking to change the system. We hear a lot about the change makers, the system changers, the people that are trying to create an alternative path to what we're saying, don't go this way, go this way. Here's an alternative. We need those guys. I was a people person, just soothing the wounds, started out there. I moved into the political side of it. How do we change the systems? I'm creating a better system. Then there's another side of it, which is the philosophy side. That's the side that says, I'm going to change the way people think so that the systems change so that the people are taken care of. So that we don't have people hurting. I want to change the way that they think. Now, I want to be clear that when I say that, my reason for kind of just putting them into the three silos there is to be clear about what it is that I'm doing. And if I'm helping a client, someone else get involved in this philanthropy, then I'm saying, look, be clear about which channel you're in, own it, and don't do all three because you're going to water down the other two. Like, pick who you're going to be totally Mother Teresa. But don't fool yourself and think that you're changing the system or the way people think. You're not. You're just soothing them when they've already been through the ringer.
Okay.
And the more you lean into that, the better you can do that one thing.
I got two things I want to dig in with you on that right there. One, well, actually, no, it's not even a dig in. It's my own commentary on philanthropy. I love how you just expanded that. We could do a whole show on philanthropy because, again, us from our Christian church upbringing, it's you tithe, right? And I remember getting to a point to where I just, I did the Christian thing and I tithe 10%. I could look at the end of the year and the church sends a thing of how much money and I could give that to the tax guy and say, hey, you can take, this is 10%, whatever I made, this was it.
Here's how philanthropic you were.
This is how philanthropic. But I remember the point of coming to however many years ago of realizing, dude, I just write the check. It's like writing an electric bill. I have no association with it. I don't know what it's doing. I don't know what the church is doing with it. What the heck am I doing? And
it negates the part that's drawing something out of you, right?
Thank you.
Because you're not engaged. You're just doing the thing.
And that again, and not to God bless the people giving money. This is not pooping on anybody's, parade, but I know
I could have done half what I did if there weren't people just writing checks.
Okay. Well, yes. Okay. Yeah. Again, great. But for my own journey, I realized that in my own economy, I was being lazy and I was just writing a check. And that was the turning point, Jared, for us of going and investing in the children's home on the reservation and using our money to help what was happening right in front of us. Now, again, it's not a diss. Don't somebody hear that and say that Kevin said, don't give it to the church, go do whatever is your.
It's what tugs on your soul, man. And I want to be clear when I talk about this stuff. I've had a wild ride and I've done some on the ground crazy stuff that we haven't even touched the surface of. But the guy that's going, trading stocks and writing a check to an organization that I'm supporting and otherwise isn't engaged at all is just as needed as the guy on the ground fighting in the Congo or whatever. Like, I don't draw a line. There's no judgment. It's all interconnected. It's all needed. And I feel like if you're heeding a call inside you to do something, then that's the thing. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm not here to judge what it is. It is all needed. We are all interconnected. It all belongs. It's all part of the deal. And I am grateful for any of that. So I want to be clear too, that I don't see like, here's the path of philanthropy. It could be anything. And the guy writing the check, not doing anything else, could be writing that check to this organization I'm working with or whatever. And instead of doing something blatantly altruistic in the world's eyes, that guy's just, loving on his kids a lot and raising little vessels of love that are not going to go start a sex ring. They're not going to go destroy our planet and cut down the trees and whatever. They're not going to go do whatever it is because he's taken that, he, she, whatever, that person is taking their time and investing in the love of these humans that they're raising. That's great. Or maybe it's just themselves, whatever. Again, there's no judgment on any of it. I come from a judgy, like community sometimes. So I just want to speak on behalf of the community and say, look, it's not a judgment. It's an
Well,
observation.
I
It's
come
just,
from a judgy spirit, so I'm pointing it out from there because I'm always battling that. And actually, spirit is the word that I like because just as you gave that analogy, which was beautiful, of that guy who's writing the check, if it lights him up and motivates him to go, man, I'm going to go make another $1,000,000 so I can write a bigger check, and that lights him up. God bless him. My experience over here writing the check to church is I realize all of a sudden that's not lighting me up at all. I'm doing this by rote.
you'll
So
know.
it was the spirit. It was the spirit behind it.
Yeah.
So I love how you just outlined philanthropy, but you said something in there, and you had said earlier that you were not interested in treating symptoms. You said that 15 minutes ago, and you said something to that effect right now, just a minute ago, as you're talking about philanthropy, because I wanted to pull that out, not to pull, and I'm not trying to pull a negative, but as we look at our motives and we look at our drives and those things that may have a season and a time, and then they can wane. And I've learned that that's okay too. That you're over here in Africa, you are,
Stories are better with chapters.
yes, you are lit up.
Yeah.
And, but then there came a time, and I'm going to put my own paraphrasing and you qualify how true it was or relevant, but where my experience of you was you felt disillusioned finally with Africa, that you weren't going to change it or do what you were doing ceased lighting you up. How's that?
That's closer. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Go with that, because again, we're talking about motives and drives, and that season ended in that faculty.
I'll simplify it.
Okay.
I went, I threw myself into that thing, that churn. At the time I was in Nairobi. We had been in Mombasa for 2.5 years, right? 5 years in Rwanda, 2.5 years in Mombasa, 2.5 years in Kenya, or sorry, in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kenya, or Mombasa and Nairobi in Kenya, just for the listeners. But they are two vastly different, it's almost like different countries. Both, however, had pretty extreme terrorist activity at the time, Al-Shabaab and um, other things I'm not going to get into on a podcast. um, anyway, so that stuff was going on there to the extent that it was before there was this system that was extracting something deep inside me that I needed to come out, that I didn't know any other way to pull it out. It served me, and I hope that it served others through that journey. I got to a point then with the increased frequency of the terrorist attacks. I was involved with the Westgate attack that was horrific. It was the coffee shop I built was where all of it took place. I lost friends in that, and it was almost more than I could take. It brought me to a moment where I felt like all I saw around me was violence. Um, I also know that all that was around me was not violence. But at the time, that's what I could see. That was the filter. It had like squished me down to this place where it's all I could see was this violence around me all the time. And again, I mean, it was very violent, but there was other stuff there. And I noticed my sort of losing the attachment that I had to some of the beauty of it all. And I started feeling like, I remember telling Ilea and some friends, I feel like I'm turning into a raging beast. I'm so angry at what I see around me.
Yeah.
I'm so hurt by the violence. I remember just breaking down a lot, and my heart hurt for what I was seeing. It deeply, deeply moved me and poked at me. And at one point, again, when I was leaving, I had a close group of, you tribe up there in the situations where you're dodging bombs. And I remember just saying like, hey, I don't think this place is making me who I want to be anymore. It served its purpose. We went to after the bike race, you don't keep racing, you stop and go home and get some food and some rest and whatever. And I just wasn't. And I remember saying the same thing that I said when I left Rwanda 5 years before that. And I said, I was fighting the good fight in Rwanda. I'd been through all the political stuff. They tried to, uh, tried to end me, so I should say, in many ways. And, and I stayed and fought it because I didn't want to leave. Because if I did, everyone just think I'd done all the terrible things they said. I stuck it out. I cleared my name. I was exonerated fully, not even just legally, but also culturally, and embraced again and asked to come back and work again, Ministry of Commerce and so on. And so I did the thing, but then I was still there doing the fight. And I remember telling Francois, my son, I was like, dude, I'm here. I'm fighting because I'm a fighter. I'm not serving the women anymore. In fact, my presence here might be causing more problems because I'm a constant liability connected to them. And if I leave, they're okay. And I said, I can't do that anymore. I packed up. I got the women sorted out in other situations and other projects and things like that. By the way, that was like 15 years ago. I just talked to a bunch of the women the other day, and it was rather emotional, but they were just like, our lives are not the same. And it's because of you and Ilea and all the things that you guys did. And whew, man, it got me. So in Kenya, I made a similar decision. I'm in this place where it's not pulling out of me. It's not breathing life into me anymore. It had served its purpose, and I needed to heal. I needed to get my breath. I needed to what ended up being going to spend 2 years in Costa Rica with the family. We had twins there. The twins came into the mix. That was unexpected, by the way. At least two was unexpected. And then I went to Costa Rica and essentially meditated in the jungle for 2 years and did a lot of yoga and got my body back and I got my mind back and I got all that stuff. And I look back at that and I think 5 years in Rwanda belonged totally every second of it. 5 years in Kenya belonged every second of it. I carry all of that with me everywhere I go. And the 2 years of recovering and all that and in Costa Rica set me with disciplines and practices and rituals and things in my life that I do every day still in my meditation and my connectedness and things that set into me that that was another chapter that belonged so much. We had a couple years or a year or so in Nashville. That was weird for me after 12 years out of the country. And that sent us off to San Diego, and San Diego's been amazing. Jumped into a group home, or not a group home, a community living situation with some close friends or became close friends. Uh, and we've got this tribe now. I mean, a lot of philosophically, I'd throw in an addition here to say that I think that socially, culturally, from a human standpoint, we're missing the tribe and the rites of passage that we had with the tribe. If we go back to 1400s Lakota, there were rites of passage for everyone, all the gender, both genders. And we had, these things that we'd go through to hurl ourselves into something that might pull something magical out of us, just like what I'm talking about, these rites of passage. Me going to Africa was a rite of passage. But then it's the community that you come home to, the tribe, in the Lakota sense. You have the tribe that's there for accountability, for inspiration, for nurturing, for a good hug, for food, and for all that stuff that nurtures you. And I feel like the rest of my life now has been really focused on how do I recreate that? I want to hurl myself into situations that pull something magical out of me. I'm motivated by that. I also want to have a tribe around me of people that will hold me accountable, that will look me in the eye and say, brother, you're off. How do we get you back on,
Yeah.
and into alignment? And so those are things, yeah, all that stuff's kind of come out of that journey where I think, yeah, I know why I hurl myself into things now.
I
I
want to
get it.
clarify that one just to serve those listening who are pondering their own motives, their own directions, and we tend to hear things and it's easy to, and we want to extrapolate things and model things that resonate with us. But when you talk about that hurling yourself in, because again, I look at that and go, I in the way that I don't feel like I do it in the same way. I to go over into another, I don't even like to cross the border much. I'm fine here. I'm fine here where I understand things are in control. I do like, now we're back to when we talked about you being in Rwanda where it was challenging, and me talking about, my Rocky Mountain area. We like that thing that requires more of us. We feel more, whatever. And I do that, in business and in family. I like the pressure. I
Yeah.
need the pressure, and I need it because it will require something of me. Otherwise I just feel dull and numb. But I want people to hear that too, that they may, to consider where they are. They may not be hurling themselves into a war torn country, but you don't have to. And
You can hurl yourself into a secluded cabin in the woods. That's
okay,
a thing.
okay, yeah. Well,
No.
I like that because people are gonna have a hard time, relating with where you are with what you've done. Even I mean, I do, but then I see, gosh, but I get the core of that thing. I love how you say that you find out what it's going to pull out of
What's
you.
the environment that's going to pull the thing out of you, the magic
Right.
out of you? It's obviously for you and I, it's very different. Yet, the way that I often refer to this, someone saying, "Oh, well, I did this," but it seems like a similar motivation. I often just say, "Yeah, it's just two rooms and or two doors into the same room, man. I took one, you took a different one, but we're kind of heading in the same direction." I mean, like you and I resonate in that way, and that I think that ultimately we're pushing for basically the same things in completely different ways through
Mhm.
totally different experiences with different humans around us and all that, different environments, the whole thing. But if we come up to the same ledge someday together, I have a feeling we're looking out thinking pretty much the same motivation. It's like a very aligned motivation.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of people like that in my life. Half my friends are old, our parents' age, and I've got people like that in my life. And then I work with a lot of younger people. And it's just like we're all having different experiences. And I love it when I find a bridger is what I call it. It's like I need a bridger, somebody that's like willing to go in that space, and talk and be a light in that space. And I have friends in the, evangelical church that are being a light in that space, and I'm grateful for that. I have
You
friends
still have
in
friends
the
over there?
I do.
you, as you're saying that though, I like you've been talking about light up, that I would depict you and me as people who have a strong desire to be lit up and have a strong desire to see other people lit up, whatever that means. And there was a time, go back, I mentioned before that I think I'm always struggling with a judgmental nature. And I used to try to define what you should be in the magic.
I remember those conversations.
I know. Thank you. Oh
Yeah.
no, I'm so sorry, brother.
Hey, it
Of
all
what you
belongs.
should do to be lit up, and I will probably the rest of my life continue to back off of that. And I found so much more peace and grace and understanding and honor of people lighting themselves up in ways that I don't understand at all. But thank God it lights them up, because if they're lit,
Right.
I'm lit, and everybody around them is lit. Okay, so this is a lit podcast show right here. My I do want to come back to one thing, because it's just of interest to me when we consider a motive and a why. And man, what drove somebody to do that? You changed your name. I don't know
I
if
was just
that's
thinking of that as you were talking.
really,
Yeah.
because I don't know where that hits on the highlight momentous aspect of your life. But for me, if somebody told me, somebody changed their name. Well, no, I know you did it before this happened, but since then, my oldest adopted Brienne. She was not born with that name, so she was born on the reservation, and foster care and sex abuse, and that whole story. She came to be with us, and part of her adoption process, she wanted to change her name. Now you would hear that and go, oh yeah, she wanted to take your family name, right, Kevin? No, she wanted to change the whole deal. So she changed her first name to a name, and I can't even remember actually where that name came from. It had some meaning for her, but a different first name. And I think she kept her middle name. And I think her middle name was her original one, and then did take our last name. So now she has her name completely different. And for her, that was a leaving behind things that she was done with.
Yeah.
It wasn't a running, a hiding, or whatever. She said, no, I am not that. I don't want to be what people expected of that girl. I want to be something new. And she is, and that's glorious. So I look at you, and somebody could easily extrapolate that. Now, man, dad must have beat the hell out of that guy to change his last name. I heard about Dan Miller, but one of his
Yeah.
kids changed their last name. You got to get that story.
Trying to fly the coop. Yeah.
Well, that's a valid pondering, I'm sure, for anybody. Well, and I know also because as I speak your name in different arenas on a
Right.
show or something, I'll say, "Oh, that's my brother," and I use the term sometimes. I don't know if you notice this, but if I ever use the word brother with somebody else, it's lowercase. You're the only one in my life that has the uppercase B on
Right.
brother.
Yeah. I mean, I say brother
Yeah.
every other word.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. But you're actually my brother. We have the same parents
Yeah.
as far as we know. And
Yeah.
even because when we went to California, that was the constant question. So you guys brothers in like what way? Just different parents? And no,
Yeah.
actually,
Clearly not the same breed. Yeah.
suppose we haven't had a DNA test, but apparently, even though we look nothing alike, and you don't even
Yeah.
look like the same ethnicity, you we share that. Anyways, you changed your name. That's a big
Yeah.
deal. That's a big. That's a psychological. That's a shift. Why?
I mean, you'll find my reasoning quite congruent with everything else we've talked about, but I just felt like, first of all, I've been, another thing I hurled myself into was women's rights and the gender equality and things like that. For me, it's no different than racial. I guess it's just all. It's like we're all humans. We either appreciate our uniqueness or demonize each other for it. That's one doesn't work very well.
So you were in
um,
2020 also, huh?
yeah, yeah. So I I had a well, it was when we were getting married, Ilea and I, and we were talking marriage, and then name stuff came up, and I immediately just it like pricked me, and I thought, wait a minute, I know why we give women our last names from before in Europe. It was to show them as our property.
We're
It's
the
like
dominant
brand,
species.
it's
Yeah.
like branding a slave, and I was like, holy smacks, I'm not doing that. Um, I mean, I don't even eat meat. Like I'm deliberate, I'm like, I think about things like that. Um, so I thought, and again, not to like demonize anybody that just did the traditional thing. It's not that big of a deal.
Well, I did. It
I
never
tend to
occurred.
have that.
It never occurred to me. Well, though
Well,
we have a lot of conversations in the family when something will come up and go, let's just all just change our names, like Uncle Jerry did.
well, it's yeah, and then once you break the seal on that, it's like, oh, well, it's not. It doesn't seem like that big of a thing now. It's like it seems congruent again with my life, right? So, I when we were gonna when we were thinking about getting married, we started talking about it. I then talked to dad, and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I don't want you to what are your thoughts? And of course, as you know, he was the biggest fan. He was like, oh, I'll do like Bono or something cool, like a one word. So dad thought it was cool. I had no problems getting past that gate. He talks about it more than I do, I think. Uh, and I'm grateful for that. That's congruent with him. Go out and shake the tree. Do your own thing. So I thought, what would I do if I was going to change my name? What would it be? I'll skip ahead. I just wanted something aspirational, something that it's like my tattoos. I have tattoos that are like reminders of who I want to be, things that I want to aspire to, of mercy and grace and justice and equality and all these things, written in other languages all over my body. Uh, the name, I then said, okay, if I'm going to do, it's like getting a peace pipe in the Lakota sense. You don't go get one and buy one or make one or whatever. It's given to you by an elder. The name, same thing. Like your name is given to you by the elders. Uh, with the Rastafarian culture, which is very different than what people understand in the States. It's a beautiful kind of a religion ritual kind of scenario that essentially
It's just
makes
Bob
you
Marley, right?
yeah, it's not. It's essentially the I and I philosophy. I did not plow the field today. I and Great Spirit together plowed the field that we're all interconnected to. It's all one big fluid symbiotic motion.
Yeah.
So I liked that kind of thought. And I went to that Swahili Rastafarian culture, which is where we were moving in the beginning of our marriage to Mombasa and all that kind of stuff. And I had a friend that's a Rastafarian. His mother, she I said, look, what would you name us? And she's like, I want to know you better than what I do through my son. And so she interviewed us and so on. All these things happened. And ultimately she said, I have a name for you. And it's Angaza, which I knew at the time even means, it means to bring the light, to illuminate. Um, and I thought, well, the letters work. You can say Angaza. It's not 82 consonants or vowels together or whatever, like a lot of the languages, and especially in Kinyarwanda. But in Swahili, it's a little easier to translate.
It's a
And I
great
love
strategy
Swahili.
for getting your domain name as well, because Kevin Miller, I got no hope of getting that one. So
I
yeah,
am the only Jared Angaza, as far as I know, on the planet. Angaza is not typically a name, like a person's name. It's like my daughter's name, Sersha, is not at it's now more of a name. People, it's more famous. But back when I got it for her, 8 or 9 years ago, uh, it was more of just a term that you would say. It means freedom in Gaelic. Freedom, think William Wallace.
yeah.
It was more of a rebel cry. It was the name of the IRA, not the IRA, sorry, the Irish Revolution. The underground newsletter that they had was called Sersha, the freedom.
Hmm.
It was for freedom for the people. So naturally, I named my daughter after that. But that's it's our brand, right? I'm a brand guy. I create brands and identities and things. And I thought, well, my name is going to be something I want to aspire to. It's our family legacy. Are we bringing the light? How many times do I look at my kids during the week and say, "Hey, baby, you bringing the light? You being on Gaza today? Um, let's bring the light into this situation. How can we do that?" So it's again, it's another situation. My last name is an environment that I threw myself into to see what it would continue to pull out of me for the rest of my life as people hold me to being a light.
It's the ultimate tattoo is what just occurred to me. Yeah, it's
I
because
thought the same thing,
as
actually.
I have been, thinking I'm going to get a tattoo, and I haven't. I've been waiting for the inspiration of that's the thing that I want to put on me. I've literally used magic markers some days to write on my hand. I'll write it like on the right here on the hand where I see it, and write that thing that I do not want to forget, because I am blown away at the epiphanies I'll have, the commitments I'll have that I forget. The day goes on, man, I think that's what I want a tattoo of. And you changed your name. Um,
People ask me
so
about tattoos a lot, and it's like, they're not for you.
yeah,
These are just my post-it notes up in my desk in front of me every day to remind me of who I want to be.
yeah,
Instead of
which
my
is
name.
and I know you know this well, which is why I sometimes it grieves me when I see some of the things that people do tattoo on themselves, to
Right.
wonder
Yeah.
what did that come from? What does that mean to them? And who are they being as a result of it? We started on space. I want to come to space because I don't know this answer. As you had somewhat of this thread, as you shared from childhood, what was the occurrence of when you said, this is more than an interest? This is something that I want to commit myself to. I want to qualify that though with the thread being the most important, as you know, and right now it is space. Is that what you're going to be 20 years from now? Feels hard for me at my point of life to say I've kept the thread pretty consistent. I've been a little surprised at some of the vehicles it's taken that I didn't necessarily intend. So however long this specific vehicle goes, but when you said I'm this is my whatever that word is, calling, commitment, devotion.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that because of my story, I'm uniquely equipped to do the the very unique thing that I do in the space community, which is to create identities for these organizations and then to continue to create strategies to uphold that identity, which helps us then realize the vision of the organization, the
Just
mission of it.
restate that again, because yeah, this is a job role. So Space for Humanity exists over here, and they've got their CEO and their yada yada and their whatever. You were brought on to, say it again, create their
I'm the
identity is what you said.
director of strategy now is my official title, but I was brought on as an identity architect to create the identity, to say, what is the most authentic thing of all these humans involved in this organization that we bring forward as an identity of the organization that I can then start to bridge into people's lives so that they can relate to this this movement, this culture that it's really culture, I think, in an organization that we're creating. So I'm there to cultivate that and to tend to that culture there, the way we do things, the way we see things, the way our language. I create the language for my clients, the way they talk to people in a way that it's like if I want to convince you of something, I'm best off to really listen to you to understand a little bit about what motivates you. I do this a lot with my clients. I just want to know what I have a whole workshop I do for my clients on understanding what your audience is motivated by, or what the
Well,
person you need to convince is motivated by.
disclosure, I have been a client. And
Right.
when I decided, I know I've been talking about this story more and more, when I decided, here I've got this audience, and yet I had left a platform and just kind of been in anonymity. But yet here I've got this big podcast audience, and felt a motive arise, birth, that I did have something specific I wanted to bring forth. And I need a platform around that. And I want to write a book on this specific topic. And hey, brother, help me flesh this out. So I became a client. You helped me come to because I was at first playing with want. What do people want? I don't think people have defined what
I
they want.
remember that.
Yeah. And the weaving through that brought me to motive, is really the undercurrent of that, the root issue that I care about, that you saw as consistent. It's what lit me up. It always has. And so you brought that forth, and that's where I have established my website and social media, and the direction that this initial book and this podcast and whatnot. You created that identity. And I want to pull that out because you could easily hear, Space for Humanity. This is what they do. Why do they need an identity? I'll let you just answer that. For any business person out there, the value and benefit, I was going to say need, but benefit, I would say need myself, but benefit of
Yeah, that's reasonable.
an identity, or the risk of not having one.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. That's a bigger question too. I remember telling dad this years ago, actually. This was long, long ago, 15, 20 years ago. I said, look, you can create your identity or let your audience do it for you. It may or may not be accurate or what you want to lean into and be known as for the rest of your life. So you can do it intentionally or let it be done for you. I suggest the former, to do it intentionally, because to me, what I'm trying to do with a client is to say, look, if it's an individual like you, when we work together, it's like, who do you want to be to the people that you're serving? What are you committed to cause? You signed up to serve these people. How do you want to do it? You're going to cause something in their life. What is it going to be? Let's be deliberate about it. Let's play chess and extrapolate out from here. If you did that, what might happen? How do you want people to feel? And if you're clear, if we can get clear on that, and there's a process for that, we got clear on that with you, and then say, okay, well, then how do we create a language around it that resonates with your audience, that will actually captivate them, grab their attention and hold it, and Lord willing, compel them to act, because that's really what we're trying to do. Compel them to change their behavior, compel them to push a button and buy, whatever it is, because you've got something beautiful to offer them, right? And so we have to say, well, that's great. Now we have to let them know that in a way that's going to attract them to you. You can have a great service or product or whatever. And if you don't have that identity and the language that speaks to your audience and the connection with them, that bridge to them, it's kind of all for naught. People spin their wheels all day.
What I want
But
to hear people, I want people to hear that you just went like 100 fathoms below brand. What's your brand? That you went.
that's on the outside. That's
Yeah.
the wrapper when we get
Thank
done.
you.
And I think that because what we're doing along the way is we're strategizing, we're pulling stuff out of each other. I learn in my client stuff too. And I got all kinds of stuff out of myself with working with you and thinking like, oh my God, I need to think about this in my life. But there's a dance back and forth where it's like, we're going to get in this space, we're going to dance together. And we're gonna go deep into who you are and what you're really motivated by. If I can figure that out, then we can create an identity around that and create a language and these bridges and these connections to the people that most your ideal audience is just, who values what you do most and is willing to engage in it, pay for it, whatever it is, show up or both. So in doing that, with Space for Humanity, it was a lot of coming in and just saying, okay, what are you doing? What is it that you really, really want to do? What do you want to be known for? That tells me a lot. I want to be known for being nice and lighting people up. So it means I have to do a lot of stuff to be known for that, right? We earn it. And I think that's good. Let's know what we want to be known for. Let's be clear about that and say, okay, I'm going to earn that in everything that I do. So I'm creating the strategies and the behaviors and the culture that supports this identity that we created that people are going to connect with. But it's got to be supported by this culture and this way we think and the commitments and the systems and all the things that we do to show up in that identity every day that is the most authentic, us as a team. And it's also very clearly articulating our desire to, in this case, cultivate a movement to expand access to space for all of humanity. And one of the things that I say that sort of speaks to who we are is to say that our future in space depends on who we resolve to be on Earth today.
Hmm.
We're designing our future out there. You asked earlier, why space? I can answer that real easily. You have some background as to my personal love for space, but ultimately I think about what are we doing as a society? There was a time when we were on one continent, Africa, and we explored up north. It pulled stuff out of us. It made us plan how to reap and sow during seasons. We didn't have seasons in Africa. You're just sitting there with avocados falling on your head year round. It's a different scene. But when
Yeah.
we went north, it pulled something out of us as humans. And then we went from there and we came over to this continent that you and I live on. In that, there was an exploration. We're going over there. We don't know if we're going to fall off the side of a flat Earth or if we're going to come back to where we started. We don't know anything. We don't know if we go on forever and never find anything and die at sea. And I think, well, those guys, something was coming out of them. Those explorers, they were figuring out. I mean, imagine this shift in humanity, like just the group psyche of all humans at the time that shifted once we started going to other continents and exploring, and we started exploring seasons or experiencing seasons for the first time. And snow, for God's sake, at some point
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, there's snow. What is that?
It's manna
Um,
falling again.
yeah, what on earth? So that it was extracting something out of them, deeply human. Now it's space. We have unfortunately conquered most of the world. What I hope is that I can be part of us not going out and conquering space, but in learning to be stewards of that vast network of amazingness out there. And also, more important, or just as importantly, I think, I know that the work I'm doing is also part of efforts to not to leave our planet and the plan B, scenario, but to be able to take our mining and extractive, processes and things like that off of the planet onto asteroids and things. We're already doing that. It's not just some science fiction dream. We're literally on asteroids mining them now, or at least one right now. And there, when we do that, we can treat the Earth like a sanctuary. I want a planet where we say we wouldn't dare mine and drill that beautiful, beautiful thing there. This is our sanctuary. We take care of this place. If we need minerals and whatever, go to an asteroid killing, meteor or comet or whatever out there, asteroid, and mine it from there so that we can treat this place with more love and respect. And one of my clients is protecting the primary forest, which is like the womb of our planet. And if those primary forests are decimated, we'll release more carbon into the air than if we drove all the cars in the world for a year nonstop. That's a big thing. We would, and they sequester, like all those trees are sucking in the carbon that we're currently creating. All that goes away too. We don't protect those forests, we're donezo. So there's things that I'm involved with now to say, like, what's the thing that we have to do to protect the earth the most? I've resolved that it's to protect those forests. All the other things are needed too, but if you're cleaning up plastic and our lungs are gone, it doesn't matter. Like, we need them both, but we need one before the other, or at least simultaneous. I also believe that we're going to space. We're going now. Every week we see another rocket launch.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested in our future, and that happens to be it. So I'm like, as we go there, how we get there matters. I want to be part of how we get there, and I'm interested not in what we do in space, but in who we become as we go out there, as we go to the stars. That's what matters to me most. Just like here on Earth, matters how we go to the grocery store too. It's like it all matters.
Right there. What matters to you most? So a couple of days ago, you get the call or got in contact with these women who you served in Rwanda. How many years ago again? 13? Is that what you said?
It was in 2006, so
Whatever the
yeah,
math is there.
whatever.
14,
Not that
14,
interesting.
15 years.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
they
they,
contacted me through Francois. They found him.
uh-huh.
He's in Kigali right now for the
And so
moment.
you got contacted and they gave you a testimony, and what lit you up?
Um, hmm. There was a few lines that came out, but there was Monique, one of the ladies, that said that, she said we lived a life where we didn't have smiles, we didn't have these bright moments in our life. Um, we couldn't take care of ourselves. We didn't have the pride. We didn't have the dignity. I remember dignity was a big conversation we had. I was delighted to hear them use those words again. Um, and they live a life that is very much theirs. It's not me. I'm not doing anything there for the last 15 years. Um, I'm not doing, uh, I like there was an old Chinese proverb that essentially says, when you're going to serve someone, go and find who they are, look at what they have, look at what you have, bring these things together, start there, but know that the greatest leaders, when their work is done, the people say, we have done it ourselves. And that was my motivator then. I remember reading that poem over and over to myself to remind me every time, I'm not here to be a savior. I'm no one's savior. I'm just here to facilitate a flow of something that I see as possible. Um, and I feel like I threw myself into that, and and it was like throwing myself off of a mountain and just tumbling down the whole way. I mean, I was face planting left and right, and something beautiful came out of it in my life and in their life. And they said that um, they had they'd never had anyone so blindly believe in them before, just to have the faith that I always had. And every time I looked in their eyes, I didn't see any less drive or possibility there than I would have seen in Richard Branson or something. It's just like, I know that you can go and do whatever it is that you want to do. We're here to make a path for that. And I saw the fire in those women. I mean, they were not going to be destroyed, and they were stronger than I could have ever imagined myself being. And the things that they had to put up with, and the things that they got through with their children in situations that you and I could never fathom with our own children. And to see the strength of these women, it made me feel like, oh my God, who could I ever be to just, how could I ever not um, show up? These women show up in a way that just blew my mind. Anyway, that connection and the things that, for them to come back now and say, look, it worked. Like, it changed the way we think for ourselves, about ourselves, and all that. And and we spent a lot of time talking about that, about how I read Marianne Williamson's poem over and over to them about, it's not our weaknesses that we fear most. It's our strengths. And it's that, who are we to play small? That's not
Yeah.
helping anyone, and that we're all capable, and so on. So it's just a lot of I saw uh, deep humanity in these women that brought something more human out of me, and I'm grateful for that. And to see them thriving like they're doing now is obviously, man, that blew my mind. I always hoped, to hear a story like that, but it's another thing to get a phone call on WhatsApp and hear it straight from them. So I'm very grateful for that.
Well, one of my favorite music artists is Alan Stone. And he has a song called Sunny Days. And one of the key lyrics in the chorus is, it would take so much hate for my smile to leave.
Mm,
And
I
it's
love
one that
that.
just sticks on me and makes me think of you. And
Mm,
you've seen a lot of hate. You've seen atrocities that I have I can't even relate to. and to see your smile continue and your light come forth. I'm grateful for you doing what you do to increase your own light. I'm grateful for the light I have gotten from you and benefited from. And it's just a blast to watch you lighting up so many other organizations and people. And thanks for coming on here to light me up and my day up and to light up the people who I'm so blessed to have listened to this show, brother. Thank you.
Mm, thank you, brother. It's an honor to be in this dance with you. Having the journey that we had doing your brand stuff was one of the sweetest brother moments I've ever had.
Yeah.
I was honored that you picked me and honored to dance with you in that space, man. It was so cool, and to see what you're doing now with it, I love it. And yeah, to be on the show, thank you so much.
I'm
Happy to be here.
honored to call you brother with a big B. Thanks, man.
Thank you, brother. You too.